public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, then there's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them.
Spending is a tax. As soon as the government spends money, eventually it's a tax. Sometimes we put a direct tax on the people, sometimes we borrow the money, and sometimes we print the money.
Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth.
The Patrick Riggins Show. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Oh, yes. One of us is going down. Here's a hint. It isn't moi. It isn't freedom and liberty. It's going to be these people who think it's their duty to try and ruin this country with their noxious blend of crony capitalism and government solutions. But that doesn't fly here on the Patrick Riggins Show. Here we emphasize freedom and liberty, a return to those original American values that made this country great. No, it wasn't military conquest. It wasn't government-imposed societal norms. It wasn't even religion and morality. It was freedom. Something so new to the world that even now many people have a really hard time dealing with it. But that is one of the reasons why this show exists. To demonstrate to you how freedom works, how it's not some scary thing, how it's actually liberating once you try it. And having tried it, you'll probably find yourself wanting even more. Just like the people trying to escape the iron grip of the old communist bloc countries. Except here, you don't have to go anywhere. We're already in this country. Our only job now is to vote in people who will help make it free again. Speaking of voting, I have a story real quick here in the first segment. This week we had a vote in the House of Representatives on House Resolution 2397, which was entitled the Defense Department Appropriations Act of 2014. Now, among the amendments to this bill was one that sought to limit the NSA's data collection to, quote, targets already under investigation. Now, the bill's primary co-sponsors were Justin Amash. He was a Republican or Amash, I believe. Amash. He's a Republican in Michigan. John Conyers, which is a Democrat in Michigan. Thomas Massey, he's a Republican in Kentucky. And Mike Mulvaney, he's a Republican in South Carolina. And Jared Polis, which is a Democrat in Colorado. Now, unfortunately, the amendment failed to pass. 94 Republicans and 111 Democrats voted for it. But we had 134 Republicans and 83 Democrats voted against it, and we had 12 representatives apparently not feeling it's worth their time to vote. But those voting against the amendment included Senator Boehner, or Speaker Boehner, I'm sorry, who is a Republican, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, he's a Republican, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, of course Democrat, and House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer, also a Democrat. Also, Representative Michelle Bachmann and Darrell Issa voted against this. So the leadership of the House on both sides, along with some prominent party leaders and even some Tea Party favorites, all decided that limiting the NSA spying on American citizens, well, that's just not a good idea. Okay, the Democrats, okay, fine. They love government spying on everyone. They love the government having total control. But the Republicans? Come on. These are supposed to be the people who are trying to limit government. They're always talking about how they respect the Constitution, how they're trying to reduce the intrusiveness of government. Yeah, buddy, I'm your friend. I'll get those nosy people out of your business. At least that's what I'll say until we have to vote on it. Then I'm pro-government all the way. After all, these elected representatives get a lot of money from Washington, D.C., and they aren't about to upset the apple cart up there. The whole Washington, D.C. area population is awash with politicians who have gone through the revolving door between government and high-paying positions in private business. And notice I said positions, not jobs, because These aren't jobs where these people have to work. What they're doing is they're given positions and a salary. All they have to do is loan their name to the company, maybe make some phone calls when the company needs something done in government. That's what I meant when I said at the top of the show there, we have this crony capitalism occurring in our country. It isn't real capitalism. When I hear people railing against capitalism, I always tell them they don't know what they're talking about. We don't have capitalism in this country. We have crony capitalism. The reason for that is our lack of freedom. With true freedom comes true capitalism. They're almost synonyms. If you're free, then you're also free to make money however you can. As long as you're not infringing on someone else's rights, you're free to do whatever you want. Just like this fake freedom I talk about here on this show, this fake freedom we're told is real freedom, but it's not. It's freedom as far as the government's concerned, but it isn't true freedom. Same thing with this capitalism. We're told we live in a country that encourages capitalism and entrepreneurship, but we don't. By taking away our freedom and liberty, the government has distorted capitalism into something that it might like to call capitalism, but it really isn't. If it were true capitalism, then you could start and run a business doing whatever someone would pay you to do, as long as you weren't infringing on someone else's rights. Speaking of which, did you ever notice how government doesn't mind if you engage in a vice as long as it gets its cut? It doesn't mind if you drink alcohol as long as it has a tax stamp. It doesn't mind if you engage in prostitution or patronizing it as long as it's approved and taxed, for example, in Nevada. Do you want to gamble? We'll get the government to approve it by giving it its cut. You notice how the government's like the mob or even a street gang. You can't sell your stuff on its corner without paying rent, rent being a cut of your profits. Unfortunately, this has become so ingrained in the population of this country that we allow it to happen. Heck, we're even suggesting it's a good idea. Look at how some people argue for drug legalization. They say marijuana should be legal everywhere, just tax it. Drugs should be legal, just tax them. I always tell these people, the first idea popping into your head should be freedom, not taxation. It's not should or shouldn't we be allowing this in a free society. The first thing that pops into people's heads are, well, we should allow it and tax it. No, we shouldn't be allowing anything. The government shouldn't have any say-so in the first place. If I'm not doing anything to infringe on someone else's rights, then I should have the freedom to do it. Not allowing me to or to not do something, it's none of the government's business, or anyone else's for that matter. It's only my business if it's not infringing on anyone else's rights. But this is always the first argument I hear to justify government allowing me to do something that I should already have the freedom to choose to do or not. We are so used to paying off the government with the promise that it can tax something if it'll just let us do it. We shouldn't be seeking permission from the government. It should be seeking permission from us. That's how this government was set up. We, the citizens, created the government. We don't have to ask it for anything. The government is a creation of the people. I've gone over this very idea many times before on this show, and you can check our YouTube archives at youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show and listen up and take notes. The government is a creation of us. We give it permission to do things, not the other way around. But children aren't being taught in school that this is how it works. They're being taught that government is in charge and we have to get permission from it to do anything. You want to start a business? Sure. Just pay off the government in the form of a business license. Want to practice medicine or some other professional occupation? Hey, no problem. Pay off the government in the form of local and state professional taxes. You want to buy something? Hey, don't forget those sales taxes. The person selling it to you better have gotten permission from the government. You want to own property? You better get those property taxes paid or it won't be your land for long. But Patrick, you may say, I own my land. No, you don't. You're leasing it from the government. If you owned it, you wouldn't have to pay taxes on it for things you don't use. You could contract with private companies to provide whatever you needed. You can buy a piece of land and build a house and dig a well and never move from your place, your piece of land, and you'd still owe the government money. And if you don't pay, it'll take your land from you and sell it at auction to someone else. Doesn't that sound great here in America? We have to reverse this government comes first thinking that is prevalent in our country. Fortunately, we're starting to make some headway with it, and we'll talk about that in the next segment of the show. This week, we're going to try to pour 10 gallons of show into a 5-gallon hour, and just like last week, I'll do my best to get to everything. We're up here on the first break here on the Patrick Riggin Show and the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and News Talk 98.7 WOKI. When we come back, we'll start wading into all of this and see if we can't make some sense of it in about, 2 minutes. We'll see you in a little bit. Welcome back to the Patrick Riggin Show. The guidepost for original American ideas of freedom and liberty. Heard each week here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and locally in Knoxville, Tennessee on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Have you noticed, and just coming off that commercial break, listening to Hal's promo there, apparently we're going to beat him to the gun on this, or beat him to the punch on this Chris Christie thing, but have you ever noticed that this creeping libertarianism that seems to be happening? And I talked about this last fall when I had my show on the other station there, how it seemed that liberty was starting to take hold in the Republican Party and to a lesser extent in the Democrat Party. It's quietly been growing over the past year, and now it's starting to frighten the government knows best hacks in the establishment of both parties. And one in particular is, just as you heard on Hal's promo there, it's been Governor Chris Christie, and he made some remarks last Thursday on libertarianism. Now, I've warned you about this clown already. In fact, over and over, and you can go to our archives at youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show and look through there, and you'll find a cornucopia of show segments talking about how liberal and spineless Governor Christie is, how he's no better than any of the other mealy-mouthed, wishy-washy, gutless Republican leaders. But anyway, Governor Christie was at a forum at the Aspen Institute this last Thursday, and a lot of people have been playing this, but I'm going to go ahead and play it too because I want to comment on a couple of things he said. Here's the first clip from his comments.
This strain of libertarianism that's going through both parties right now and making big headlines, I think is a very dangerous thought.
He's making this statement in response to the amendment that failed in the House that I talked about in the first segment of the show today, limiting the spying the NSA could do on American citizens. To Comrade Christie, he thinks wanting freedom from government watching you, that he thinks that's dangerous. Here's the next clip from his remarks.
President Obama has done nothing to change the policies of the Bush administration in the war on terrorism, and I mean practically nothing. And you know why? Because they work.
Hey, did you hear all that, you supporters of President Obama? Governor Christie, the man who was dating President Obama right after Hurricane Sandy. You remember that, don't you? It was such a love fest. I kind of wonder now if maybe Carlos Danger had sneaked over there to join in with the governor and the president. If you go back in our YouTube archives, we did a little spoof of the dating game with them. So you should go back and listen to that. But anyway, you ardent supporters of the president, you people who are screaming about George Bush violating everyone's rights in the war on terror, now you're remarkably silent. For those of you who might want to learn more, you can just listen to the show last week, and I addressed these people and their blind loyalty to their leader, these unthinking masses who support without question whatever their leader says they need to do, despite what they might have protested against during a previous administration. No, our guy's in office, so he deserves our blind and lemming-like support. And here's Governor Christie saying all these violations of the Constitution is a good thing. It's a good thing when President Bush was doing it. And it's a good thing that President Obama is continuing along the same path. Here's another clip from his remarks.
I love all these esoteric debates that people are getting in.
Senator Rand Paul, for example?
Well, listen, you can name any number of people who've engaged in it, and he's one of them. I mean, these esoteric intellectual debates, I want them to come to New Jersey and sit across from the widows and the orphans and have that conversation.
Here you have Governor Christie doing the exact same thing the Obama administration did with Newtown. Tell those parents whose children were killed. Tell those whose spouses were killed. Tell them we don't need gun control. Then again with this Trayvon Martin case, tell his parents, tell them you need a stand your ground law. The government will stand on the corpses of its own citizens in order to take away your freedom and liberty. Now, on 9/11, almost 3,000 people were killed in those terrorist attacks, and that's one of the main reasons why we've had our freedom and liberty largely done away with in this country. In contrast, over 25,000 people were killed in the Revolutionary War, the war to secure my rights as an American citizen. So more people died winning my rights than have died in order for them to be taken away. So yes, Governor Christie, I'll come to New Jersey and sit down with every single last one of the people who had family who died in the attacks on 9/11. And I'll also bring along all the names of the soldiers who died fighting for my freedom, fighting so I could live in a country where we don't have the government spying on us, fighting so I could have the freedom to live the way I want without the government interfering in my life. I'll also bring along the names of business leaders and entrepreneurs and everyone who has worked to build up this country. Do you think all of these people killed on 9/11 would like the fact that you're using their name and their death to restrict and limit the freedom and liberty of their fellow Americans? I know I wouldn't. So sure, yeah, I'll sit down and talk to whoever you want, Governor Christie. Look, you're nothing but a heartless, scheming politician who will use whatever slain people you need to use in order to push your governmental control agenda on the citizens of your state and this country. You're really no better than any of these other sleazy politicians who delight in the death of others so you can have an excuse to put the government in more control of the people of this country. You know, people ask me why I don't run for political office. Right here's the reason. It's because I'd punch out one of these little slimy worms in a heartbeat. I would be in jail the first week because I wouldn't stand to listen to this kind of crap. This sanctimonious, I know what's best for these poor, unwashed citizens of this country. I know what's best more than they do. These plebes just need to shut up and let government do whatever it wants to do. We can watch ourselves. We don't need you doing it. I swear if I was standing next to this ignoramus when he's spouting this garbage, I'd probably lose it. I hate to admit that, but feeling like I did when I was putting these clips together, and now to hear them again, it just makes my blood boil to hear the condescension from all these busybodies, these people flagrantly violating the Constitution on a daily basis. I'll never understand how they got into office in the first place. Let's get to this next clip before I get too riled up.
But I think we need to be very cautious about how joyful we are over the idea that somehow we're going to shift this baby way back.
So what he's saying is, don't get too excited about trying to roll back the NSA. Because Governor Christie is going to be one of the ones fighting you on it. He isn't going to stand by and let you have your freedom back. No, sir. You don't know how much you don't need it. He does, though. So you need to trust him and the government. Here's one last clip from his remarks.
What our first job is, all of us, is to protect the lives of the people we serve. And I'm very nervous about the direction this is moving in.
Wrong, Herr Christie. Your first job is to protect freedom and liberty. Here's what you swore to when you took the job as governor of the state of New Jersey. You said, I, Chris Christie, elected governor of the state of New Jersey, do solemnly promise and swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, and that I will diligently, faithfully, impartially, justly, and to the best of my knowledge and ability execute the said office in conformity with the powers delegated to me, and that I will, to the utmost of my skill and ability, promote the peace and prosperity and maintain the lawful rights of the said state, so help me God. Nowhere in there does it state that your first job is to protect the citizens. If that is your first job, though, Governor, then you aren't very good at it. In New Jersey, there were 27,173 violent crimes in 2011. 380 of those were murders, more than one a day. And you say your first job is to protect the lives of the people you serve? I'm going to tell you, you stink at it. Either you aren't serving the people of New Jersey or you aren't doing your job adequately, Governor Christie. Of course, my point is the government's job is not to protect you. That's your job. You have to watch out for yourself and the ones you love. Don't abrogate that duty or you'll find yourself hurt or even worse, dead. All right, we're up on the half-hour break here on the Patrick Riggin Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and News Talk 98.7 WOKI. When we come back, we'll continue cramming more logic and reason into the last half hour. Then you'll get in 3 hours of regular programming when we return in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to the Patrick Riggin Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Listen to some soul coughing bumper music there. That's coming out. Isn't that coming out of the 90s? Jay, I believe it is. Yeah. He's shaking his head probably. I think he's shaking his head either probably or move along with the show, Patrick.
We'll let you deduce on your own.
Yeah. It's a good song, though. Good. Who sings that song? Yeah, so talking. Keep it that way. Yeah. All right. You know, sometimes I get asked why I play so much music coming in and out of these segments, and well, I guess it's because it's my show. No, really. I like music a lot. just about all music. If I could play a whole hour of music, I'd do it. I just don't think many people would listen to it. You know, because you can get music anywhere you want on the internet, anytime you want, but you can't hear me as often. So maybe that's why if I was just playing music, people would just go, I can listen to whatever I want on the internet. But,
and you are technically on a talk station.
Yeah, there's that little thing too. So I guess I should get on with talking. Talking about something instead of just meandering around here. But anyway, you know, what I find interesting here lately, and we touched on it in the previous segment, is to hear these other talk show hosts, and I mean nationwide ones, since the country, I think, and I've seen a lot of evidence of it, it's starting to lean more libertarian. Not maybe people aren't identifying themselves as libertarians, but it's definitely moving right. And I hear these conservative talk show hosts now all of a sudden get some of this good old libertarian religion and begin reciting these talking points like they've been here all along. Now, I'm not complaining. The more people talking about less government, the better. Just be careful and don't buy into their rhetoric completely, because these are the same people who are backing more spying and more foreign involvement, more intrusive government back when Bush was in office. You may be wondering yourself, Patrick, how do you know the country's starting to lean libertarian? And you can just listen to how everyone is addressing it now. For an excellent example, the last segment with Governor Chris Christie. We used to never hear anything about libertarianism before. Now, every other day, somebody's talking about how it's a danger to our country. For those in government, For those who want government solutions to everything, well, it is a danger. But for the country, no. It's the best thing that could happen to it. I've argued on this show before. Listen close when you start hearing those libertarian themes on these conservative talk shows. You'll hear they aren't really buying into the philosophy so much as they're telling you what they think they want you to hear, or what you want to hear. They're taking some conservatism and mixing in a little bit of libertarianism, just enough to get you thinking, hey, we're on this too, we're on your side. But what they're really doing is talking about just slightly less government, but still just as intrusive. They'll tell you, well, we need the TSA, just not as much. We need the EPA, just not as much. We need the war on terror, just not as much. We need to be going into foreign countries and telling them what to do, all in this name of war on terror. We still need the insane drug war. Even though prohibition in the 1920s taught us that doesn't work and only leads to increased crime and violence. You'll hear a lot of these people saying things like, well, I'm a liberal socially, but a physical conservative or libertarian. Well, stupid, how do you pay for those social programs other than taking money at the point of a gun, something that is decidedly anti-libertarian? Or they'll say, I believe in some libertarian ideas, but not others. Well, how? Either you believe in what is being said or not. You can't say, I'm not for sending our troops all over the world, but I'm for the war on drugs. So how can you be for a non-aggression policy abroad, yet a very aggression-oriented policy domestically? What you're saying is shooting people isn't okay in another country, but it's perfectly fine within our own borders when we're forcing people to live the lifestyle that the government dictates. When you hear someone saying garbage like that, I'm a limited libertarian. No, what you are is someone without the backbone to stand up for freedom and liberty. That's what you are. Sure, you can talk a good game, but when the fire gets too hot, you wilt. Go back and listen to the clips from John Stossel and Judge Napolitano when they were talking on Fox, and I had those clips on this show last week. The clips of Mr. Stossel wilting under the NSA spying program. That's just fine. The government's violating the Constitution. But don't waste government money buying a $1,000 toilet. Now that makes him mad. That's why you can listen to this show and hear libertarian ideas fresh out of the well of freedom and liberty. We don't cut it with anything. We don't mix in our particular flavorings. We just give it to you fresh, clean, and clear. Because you're an adult and you can make your own mind up on how to run your life. That's really what libertarianism is. Letting you run your own life and letting others run theirs. But we'll have people that say, Patrick, everyone can't take care of themselves. Some people need someone else to tell them what to do. Well, maybe so. I'll give you that. But we already have a system for that. The family of that person can petition a judge to appoint one of them as a guardian. Or this person who needs care can be appointed a guardian outside the family if they don't have any family. But the rest of us don't need that. But the government seems to think differently. You see, it has appointed itself wholesale guardian of the rest of us without any court order, without any hearing. We've just been assumed to be unable to take care of ourselves, to make the, quote, correct decisions, unquote, regarding our own lives. So the government has appointed itself as our guardian, whether we like it or not. And the other nice thing is, we don't have a choice on whether we want to pay for this service or not. We're just taxed and the service is provided no matter whether you need it or not. As I said on my show last week, unfortunately, a lot of Americans are only too eager to take on the role of subservient human to the government. of letting the government provide everything and they just exist, not moving down, but not moving up either. And this is exactly what the government wants. Basically, cattle that can vote. The government provides food and shelter and, heck, even cell phones and internet service. Cows don't even get that. Just vote to keep the people in office who are giving you the free stuff. It's interesting how it's mainly the liberals who argue for this sort of thing, this dehumanization of a whole class of people in our society. That's what government aid eventually does. It robs the people it's supposed to help of any dignity, any sort of feeling of accomplishment in their lives. But have you ever stopped to think how contradictory a liberal's position is when it comes to this unconstitutional safety net they like to talk about? Back in the 1970s, these people were protesting against the government because it was sending people to die in Vietnam. These hippies didn't want anything to do with Washington, D.C., or government, even on the local level. They just wanted to be left alone to live as they wanted to live. Now, fast forward to today, they preach this government involvement in just about every aspect of our lives. They say the government should be taking money from one person at the point of a gun and giving it to another, picking winners and losers in life, something that should be an anathema to them if they were to stay true to their beliefs from the 60s and 70s. But what we see now is these people are the same people, or these people now are the same as the government people back then. They want to run everyone's lives. It's just funny how things come full circle from protesting against the man not doing what the government wanted to being the man and being the government. We're up on the last break here on the Patrick Riggins Show. Proud partner of the Beacon of Freedom and Liberty, the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network, and broadcasting our message here locally on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. When we return, we'll hit a couple more things before we run out of time. Be sure and stick around after these important messages from the people who bring you this show, our sponsors. Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show. Boy, that's a good lead-in song. Get a little head east there. That's from the 80s. I won't say that I remember that, but maybe not be familiar with it.
Takes me back to rolling around Skate Town with a dill pickle and a suicide in my parachute pants.
I remember Skate Town over there. One on Broadway?
It's still there.
It's still, they always had the little lights they would light up so you skated backwards or couple skate. I never had a couple, so
you could do the hokey pokey.
I couldn't do that. I wasn't that good on skates. I was doing good to make it around.
Well, the fun was watching people fall when they would do the hokey.
I was over there playing with those video games.
As was I.
All right. Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show. This segment's usually too short to get too far into anything, so I usually use it to do a quick story or two that doesn't require too many comments. Not that I'm lazy, but I like to try and pack as much into the show as I can. What I want to do before I get to that, though, is to ask you to think about where we are in this country. Have you ever seen so much chaos in this country being caused by one entity in your life? This administration, and I'm including President Obama and his agencies and agency heads as well, the IRS, the NSA, the Justice Department, them along with most of the people in Congress have caused more racial problems, more economic problems. It seems as if they're constantly stirring up trouble. Now, why is this? Why try to create all of this animus towards your fellow citizens? Well, here's the answer. It's to make you draw closer to government, closer to the very thing whipping all of this up. When everything looks like it's going down the tubes, the government wants you to look to it for answers. It has effectively destroyed most families along with their communities with this government aid. So when you don't have a family to fall back on, well, who do you look to? The government. It's your new family. Everyone else is your enemy, but the government is here to provide for you. It's here to make things fair. It's the one that really cares about you. Just listen to these people's speeches. The presidents, the congressional people, the governors. We just played Governor Christie saying it's his first job to protect you and to care for you. Even down to the local level. Politicians telling you everything they're going to do for you because either you can't be trusted to do it for yourself or you can't be trusted to do it for yourself in the correct fashion as dictated by them. Where has our freedom and liberty gone? People say we need more manufacturing in this country, then things will turn around. You know, I've never seen freedom and liberty produced in a factory. Other countries have had huge manufacturing bases, but no freedom and liberty. A lot of military people will tell you guns and ammunition, ships, tanks, planes, bombs, those mean freedom. While those things can secure and defend freedom, they aren't freedom. If they were, the old Soviet Russia and today's China would have all kinds of freedom, but they don't. Religious people will tell you the problem is this country lacks good morals and virtue. If we just put up signs stating we believe in God, things will be better. No, God doesn't want your signs. He wants you. Making public displays of how much you, quote, respect him only gives you your reward here on earth. The truth of the matter is it really only makes things worse. If you put up a sign that says, "In God we trust," then don't do it. If you insist on trying to make everyone live according to how you think they should live, that's something even God doesn't do. He gives you the freedom to choose how you want to live. But you profess to follow his example and then don't. Which do you think is worse? Not saying anything and not following his example? Or proudly stating to the world you trust him, but then not being a good example of his teaching by minding your own business? Look, true freedom and liberty is a way of thought. It's a way of living. We had true freedom and liberty in this country long before we had anything else. Government's very existence demands we give up a small portion of our freedom in order to give it the permission to do the limited things it needs to do. Unfortunately, our government has run amok. It's become this huge monster that is devouring everything it can get its hands on. Government's like any other organization. It will continue to grow and grow as time goes on. That's why our founders limited its power with the Constitution. If we aren't going to go by the rules laid out in that document, then what good is it? In fact, you can hear some people in Congress stating it's outdated, that its time has passed. If you're making these kind of statements, do you really think they take their oath to defend it seriously? Real quickly, getting back to my original thought, the reason why the government is constantly stirring up trouble is so you'll look to it for solutions. You'll feel overwhelmed by everything happening, and government will look like that steady land in a sea of confusion. The government will increasingly be your answer. Just look at any problems that occur in your local community. The first place people turn, the first place is government. Not them, not their community, not their neighbors. Government. Why? Because I don't want to deal with it. And isn't that what we pay them for anyway? Government has brainwashed an entire generation of citizens into looking to it for protection, food, shelter, internet service, everything. This is what we're working against. No, we shouldn't have to because we have a constitution which forbids the things government is doing. But I hope it's becoming obvious that our government is increasingly going to continue violating the limits laid out in that document. That's the goal, really, of this show in a nutshell, is to get you to think for yourself, to listen with an ear towards freedom and liberty, to question everything you're being told. There is so much money to be made in government that people are going to tell you anything they need to in order to stay in power. The good news is, though, government loses in the end. It can't survive without money, and eventually it'll run out. Just look at the old Soviet Union that collapsed under its own weight. You just have to be sure the same turkeys don't get back into office that screwed things up the first time. We're up on the end of the Patrick Riggins Show here. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've hit a bunch of stuff here. If you want more information about us, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. Riggins is Riggins. You can also go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com, again, /Patrick Riggins Show. And we have all the archive shows on there. In fact, this show will be on there this evening. And let's see what else. Oh, you can email us, patrickrigginshow@gmail.com. patrickrigginshow@gmail.com. And be sure and say hello to the NSA when you write us something. So join me next Saturday afternoon at 4 when we'll talk about freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. Yeah, that's it. 4 o'clock. I was making sure I had the right time. 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon here on News Talk 987 WOKI. Join us then.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on The Patrick Riggin Show.